Hello there guys, Hirosaki here. This story is all about what if Naruto had the ability to be invisible. An accident bestows a completely new Kekkai Genkai on an orphan boy, a blood limit that nobody could have foreseen. Please like and subscribe to this channel before we begin, and check the description box for the author of this great storyline. Welcome aboard. Chapter 21. From the top of the Hokage monument, the view of Konoha was quite spectacular, although only one of the two cloaked figures was paying any attention. "Such a shame I'll never become the Hokage," said the pale-skinned man, then he shrugged. "Oh well. Otokage is a good prize to have instead." "Exactly why did you place that seal on the Uchiha?" the other figure asked, and the first turned to face him. "Thanks to the resurgence of that damned Uchiha loyalty to Konoha, the only Uchiha not affiliated with this village is Uchiha Naka, our newest recruit, and he has the damned Mangekyo. I want a Sharingan, but for that to happen, I almost need a rogue Uchiha. The seal I placed will soon drive Sasuke into seeking more power to surpass his brother, and that will lead him to me. And if he does not succumb? Then when the time comes to flatten Konoha, I shall acquire some samples to experiment with." Orochimaru shrugged. "Either way, I will get what I desire." "You truly are out only for yourself. You knew that when you approached me," Orochimaru countered. "Besides, Akatsuki has done well with my aid." The other figure nodded with reluctant agreement, and both turned to look over Konoha once more. Naruto glanced round the arena as he took his place in the ranks of the assembled genin who had passed the test. On the balcony that stretched along three sides of the hall, Sasuke and Kabuto watched them. Sasuke sat on a chair and Kabuto stood beside him with his left arm in a sling from when he'd managed to break it falling down a flight of stairs, thus causing him to drop out of the exam. He'd asked for, and had been granted, permission to watch, both to act as moral support for his teammates and simultaneously provide a Mednin assistant for Sasuke, freeing up a more experienced Mednin for when they were needed to heal a genin. The genin themselves were predominantly Konoha-nin, although several other teams had made it through with 2 scrolls. In addition to the Sand siblings, the Mist team and Team Samui, Naruto's team had been joined by the 2 active members of Team 8 while Kabuto's 2 teammates were nearby. Niji's team stood behind him, giving a total of 19 genin, who had managed to reach the end of the test. The noise dropped as the Jonin senseis of the genin team stepped onto the raised stage at the front of the hall, along with the Hokage, who paused to look out over the assembled genin as Anko stepped forwards and switched on her microphone. "Alright, now pay attention," Anko said, her voice echoing through the hall. "Lord Hokage is about to explain the 3rd exam to you, so you'd better pay attention, maggots. Lord Hokage, they're all yours." Naruto noted how Anko had gone from commanding to respectful with that final sentence, then he paused his mental note-taking as the Hokage stepped forwards. "Ahem. First, before I tell you what the 3rd exam entails, I want to explain something about the test itself. Listen closely now, it's something all of you need to understand." The already quiet hall seemed to go absolutely silent as the Hokage spoke. "I'm going to tell you the true purpose of these exams. Why do you suppose our country holds these exams in conjunction with our allies? To raise the ability levels of the shinobi and increase friendship between allied nations, to be sure. But it's important you understand its true meaning. The exams are, so to speak, they're a representation of the battle between allied nations." Everyone seemed to inhale in shock at that. "What's that supposed to mean?" Tenten asked before she could stop herself. "Now, if we look at our history," the Hokage continued, "all the countries that we're currently allied with were once neighboring nations that continuously fought with each other for power. In order to avoid destroying each other's military strength meaninglessly, those countries picked champions to do battle on behalf of their countries at a mutually selected location. That was how the Chunin selection exams originally began. These exams give ninja a chance to test themselves against each other, carrying the pride of their nation on their backs. Many leaders and people of prominence from various countries are invited to attend this exam as guests, and to possibly seek shinobi to work for them. This exam could determine the course of your ninja work from here on out. And more importantly, those rulers will watch your battles, and take note of the strengths that each ninja, and each nation is developing. The strong nations are inundated with job requests for their ninja, while conversely, the requests for countries that are deemed weak decline. Therefore, the stronger our nation is, the better its position when it comes to negotiating with neighboring countries, so it is important to show how much military strength our village has. In other words, these exams are nothing less than a replacement for war, giving each nation a chance to show the strength of its shinobi, and thus the strength of its military. There was a long pause as all the genin considered what he had said, then a trenchcoat-wearing man stepped forwards. As you know from the first stage, my name is Ibiki, and I will be overseeing this part of the exam. He growled. There are still too many of you to enter the final stage, so we are going to cut that number in half, but one of you will get a free pass. The screens behind me will show the results of the random selection. Those selected will go head-to-head to decide who gets to go through. Killing is allowed, but not if the match has been stopped. You get through by defeating your opponent or making them surrender. If I call a fight, you will comply by my decision. First names. To either side of the statue of the ram seal, curtains pulled back to reveal screens on which names were flickering too fast to make out. After a few seconds, the screens seemed to blink as the first two names were revealed. Inuzuka Kiba of Konoha and Samui of Kumo remain on the floor. Ibiki said. Everyone else, please head up to the balconies. Naruto paused long enough to clap Kiba on his shoulder to wish him luck, then he walked up the stairs to where Hinata was waiting near Sasuke, Sakura, Shino and Kabuto. A moment later, they were joined by Itachi and Kurenai. How are you feeling, little brother? Tired, achy and sore. Sasuke admitted. Sakura's been practicing her medical jutsu on me to help me heal. On the plus side, I'm up to 3 tomo on my Sharingan now. Itachi gave his younger brother a proud smile, then they all turned their attention to the floor below where Kiba and Akamaru were squaring off against Samui, who had drawn her sword. Be careful, Kiba-kun. Hinata whispered as Ibiki took a step backwards. Fight. Kiba pulled out a pair of kunai and lunged forwards. Samui sidestepped and slashed at him, only for her tanto to be blocked by Kiba's paired kunai. An instant later, Samui grimaced and looked down at her now damp leg as Akamaru leapt away. Your dog, pissed on me? Kiba pushed her tanto away and slashed at her, nicking her sleeve as she dodged. Made a great distraction, didn't it? Dynamic marking. Naruto whispered in realization. He's pulling out the big guns. Akamaru, here. Kiba shouted as he tossed his Ninken a food pill, then he made a few hand seals. Shikyaku no Jutsu. Kiba's form seemed to twist slightly as he dropped onto his hands and feet, wisps of chakra rising from him. His nails seemed to extend slightly into claws, and his whole aspect turned more feral before Akamaru jumped onto his back. Jujin Bunshin. The duo were engulfed in smoke which cleared to show that Akamaru had transformed into a clone of Kiba. Samui blinked, then eased into a defensive stance. Getsuga. Kiba shouted as he and the transformed Akamaru lunged forwards, even as they started to spin. Between their rotation and the chakra wisps around them, they turned into spinning drills of flying destruction. Samui's eyes widened and she frantically dodged the first attack, only for the two drills to curve round, converging on her new location from wide angles. How on earth are they following her? Kabuto asked curiously. With them spinning like that, there is very little chance that they are doing it visually. Samui's panicked backflip managed to let her avoid the drill that gouged into the arena floor before its ricochet took it up into the air for another attack. Akamaru marked her. Hinata supplied and Sasuke snickered. So that's why he did it. Samui used the flat of her blade to deflect an incoming attack, which she couldn't dodge in time. Although it worked, she was left with little more than a hilt in her hands while fragments of the blade clattered across the floor. Seeing another incoming attack, she pulled out a small paper tag and dropped it on the floor before leaping backwards. The tag ignited and the resulting explosion caused a shape to tumble through the air, impacting Samui head first. There was a long, shocked silence as everyone stared at the tableaus, then Kiba rocketed backwards trailing a line of blood, crashing onto the ground out cold, but with a huge grin on his face. The other drill dissipated and Akamaru dropped to the ground, running over to check on his master. Winner by knockout, Samui. Ibiki declared in a flat voice over the rising tide of laughter and wolf whistles. Samui simply stood in shock, looking down at her cleavage and the smear of blood on it. What a way to lose. Kurenai sighed, then she glanced at Itachi, who was looking slightly embarrassed. You know, the story of this fight is going to be a hit amongst the Jonin. Itachi nodded, glancing across to where the Mednin were taking Kiba away on a stretcher, while Samui was staggering back to the stairs up to the balcony, trying to pull her mesh undershirt up to cover the normally exposed portion of her cleavage. Hinata gasped. Ruto-kun. Urei Ruto of Konoha and Chojuro of Kiri. Naruto glanced across to see the glasses-wearing youth with an oddly shaped two-handled sword attached to his back talking quietly, but intensely to Zabuza. After a moment, Zabuza made a cutting motion with his hands and Chojuro nodded. As advised by my Jonin-sensei, I wish to forfeit. He declared and Naruto paused halfway down the steps. That kid's scary. Zabuza added and almost every single Jonin in the room stared at Naruto with curiosity and respect. If Zabuza says that, it must be true / a genin scarier than me or you. Be rapped before getting dope slapped by Samui. Why you hate my rap? Rap. Now isn't a cool time for that. Samui hissed, then she looked round with an embarrassed smile. Carry on? Very well. Winner by forfeit, Urei Ruto. Ibiki said. Next names please. Everyone watched as the screens flickered through the lists of names before the settled. Would Gaara of Sunaga and Akato Yoroi of Konoha please make their way to the arena? The masked genin strode down to the arena, while Gaara used a Sansunshin to appear before Ibiki. Same rules as the first match. Ibiki said, then he stepped backwards. Fight. Yoroi lunged forwards and then jerked to a halt as a wall of sand rose in front of him, then it crested and collapsed over where he would have been standing had he not leapt backwards. A ninjutsu type, huh? He sneered. Well, I think that gives me an advantage. Yoroi lunged forwards again, this time with his hands covered in a thin layer of chakra. Once again, the sand wall rose, but this time he thrust his hands into it. Gaara simply watched impassively, then Yoroi started to scream, jerking backwards to reveal that his hands were covered in chakra burns. What are you? It does not matter. Gaara droned. You will prove my existence. Yoroi had just enough time to try and raise his burned hands in a block before the wave of sand crashed over him. Gaara stared, then held out his hand. Sabaka so-so. He stated, clenching his fist, and the sand seemed to implode, causing a spray of blood to splatter the floor of the arena. A moment later, the sand withdrew, returning to the gourd on Gaara's back, revealing the mangled tatters that had once been a Konoha shinobi. Winner, Gaara. Ibiki noted as several of the genin turned and started to throw up. Someone clean up this mess. Hinata turned away from the gory pile, her face tight as she fought not to give in to the urge to vomit. Hinata, Naruto whispered, Gaara's a Jinchuriki as well. If you go up against him during the finals, withdraw. With his control over sand. Hinata nodded as she managed to regain her self-control. Turning back, she couldn't help but glance at the area that Yoroi's remains had occupied, an area now cleaned through a sweetened jutsu. A quick look round showed that Gaara had rejoined his team, none of whom had looked surprised by his actions. Next match. Ibiki stated. Hyuga Niji against Hozuki Suigetsu. Niji strode proudly down the stairs while his opponent, the white-haired teen with a single protruding fang, unhooked his weapons before following suit. The Kabutawari or helmet splitter Itachi said softly as he leaned forwards. That is one of the 7 swords of the mist. Given that Zabuza uses the Kubikiribocho, that might mean that, yes. On Chojuro's back is the Hiramakari. Interesting. I wonder if the third of his team uses it. Yes. That long thin handle is probably the new Abari, the needle sword, used to pierce enemies and secure them with ninja wire. An excellent weapon for one who is fast but prefers not to kill. And the weapon that Suigetsu-san is using? Hinata asked curiously. The helmet splitter is a 2-part sword. The axe part is used to strike an enemy, then the maul increases the power by striking the back of the axe. Both parts can be used independently, with the maul providing a brute force strike, or being used to generate shockwaves in the ground. Below, both combatants had squared off and Ibiki nodded. Begin. Suigetsu stepped forwards, turning to swing the axe portion of his weapon around in an attempt to disembowel Niji. Niji ducked and used an upward strike to divert the attack, then he took another step. You are within range of my divination. 8 trigrams 64 palms. As Niji's hands made contact, sprays of liquid spattered the ground, then Niji leaped backwards as Suigetsu seemed to dissolve, and then reform. That hurt. The white-haired teen growled before his arms seemed to flex and expand. How did you resist my attack? Simple. Suigetsu grinned. I'm a Hozuki. We can turn ourselves into water and use that to heal ourselves. You can't hope to defeat me. That would explain the apparent lack of defensive moves in his combat style. Itachi murmured. Below them, Niji frowned. Every advantage has a disadvantage. What is yours? You think I'll tell you? Suigetsu smirked as he moved in to attack again, his weapon swinging faster than before. Kaiten. Niji briefly vanished in a dome of chakra, which sent Suigetsu slamming into a wall where he vanished in a large splash before reforming and pulling the axe blade out of the wall. Interesting trick. He smirked, then he swung the maul up high and onto the ground, causing the tiles around him to crack as the entire arena briefly shook. I've got a few of my own. Indeed, you have. Niji snarled, then he sighed. I can see that using those techniques has quite a chakra cost for you, but between your weapon and abilities, I do not see any weaknesses I can exploit with my current skills. Should we meet again, I will have made preparations, but for now, I concede. Suigetsu blinked, then laughed triumphantly. Yeah. Huh? I win. Winner, Suigetsu. Ibiki said almost needlessly, then Zabuza's voice echoed round the arena. Water brat, stop fucking around and get back up here. Suigetsu went almost white, then he vanished in a sudden shunshin, appearing with his team. Niji turned and walked back to his team, where Lee placed a commiserating hand on his shoulder. Next up are Rock Lee of Konoha and Karui of Kumo. Ibiki said, and Lee paused to exchange a few quiet words with Niji, before vaulting over the balcony railing to land lightly in front of Ibiki. A moment later, they were joined by Karui, whose amber eyes glared at Lee, and the 2 katanas he was wearing crossed on his back. Ah, I see you are another kenjutsu user. Lee grinned. You carry an odachi, which means that your style is primarily based around horizontal slashes and downward strikes. And you carry 2 katana, indicating that you're a poser trying to bluff since you're too young to have learned more than the absolute basics of a 2-sword style. Karui countered, causing Lee's grin to turn into a frown. That is a very unyouthful thing to say. He half scolded and Karui snorted. Like I give a damn. She sneered as she slowly unsheathed her blade. Lee's hands snapped up and in a well-practiced move, his blades blurred out of their sheaths and he took a stance with his left hand extended, the katana held horizontally with the edge forwards and his right hand drawn back with the katana angled downwards. Ibiki stepped backwards a few paces before speaking. Begin. Lee seemed to blur forwards, his blades moving so fast that he seemed to be holding a pair of metal fans. Hinata's eyes widened in shock. Karui yelped as she frantically blocked, her sword ringing with the impacts even as she backpedaled as fast as she could in an attempt to avoid the multiple attacks which seemed to be coming in from every angle. On the balcony, Samui and Omoi watched in speechless shock while their sensei simply cocked an eyebrow. "Do you yield?" Lee asked as he effortlessly disengaged and stepped out of range. Karui glared at him, then she froze as the front of her dress seemed to evaporate over her midsection, the fabric strips falling gently to the ground and exposing her stomach. "How the fuck?" she began, then she growled. "You fucking pervert." With a scream of rage, she lunged forwards, her sword flashing and twisting through the air at incredible speed as she fought to penetrate Lee's defenses. Lee merely laughed joyfully as he deflected and dodged her attacks, then he was suddenly behind her, spinning away as the remains of the upper portion Karui's dress fluttered to the ground, leaving her stood in a skirt and bra. Karui yelped and dropped her sword as she tried to cover her chest. "Fuck. It is a lesson that one of my senseis taught me," Lee explained with a smile. "If you do not wish to actually harm your enemy, victory can be achieved by deducing their weaknesses and exposing them." Guy facepalmed as a sudden chorus of chuckles sounded from the balcony. Lee looked around in confusion. "What? How the hell is my cleavage my weakness?" Karui snarled. "What cleavage?" A voice called and Karui turned red with rage. "Whoever that was, you're dead meat," she shouted, then she stopped as she found the point of Lee's katana just under her chin. "Please yield. I would hate to damage a flower as beautiful as yourself." Karui glared at him, then her shoulders slumped. "Fine. You win. Now someone get me a new top." "Winner, Rock Lee," Ibiki said in an amused voice, earning a glare from Karui. "Next names, please." Karui gathered up her sword in its sheath before slouching off, still covering herself with her arm as Ibiki turned to look at the screens. The next competitors are Temari of Suna and Yuki Haku of Kiri. Chapter 22. The next competitors are Temari of Suna and Yuki Haku of Kiri. Ibiki said. Temari quickly left her team and walked onto the arena where she paused, looking at her adversary. "Are you a boy or a girl? Does it really matter?" Haku responded. "I do not see how it makes a difference to this match." Temari frowned as she examined the figure before her, then she growled and shook her head. "Damn it, which are you?" "Perhaps this should wait, we do have a fight to do first." "Correct," Ibiki said. "Get ready." Temari unslung the large metal club-like thing from her back and opened it, revealing it to be a combat fan. Haku, meanwhile, unsheathed the long, thin metal needle sword. A slight glitter descending from the pommel was the only indication of the ninja wire attached to it. "Begin." Haku leapt sideways as Temari swung her fan, sending a blast of cutting wind through the space where the dark-haired ninja had been standing. "You see the moon on my fan?" Temari asked as she readied her weapon for another attack. "Once you see all three moons, that will be the last thing you ever see." "We shall see about that," Haku said, pulling out a small scroll and unrolling it in the same movement. As Temari cocked her head, Haku applied a small bit of chakra, and a veritable fountain of water erupted from the scroll, covering the arena to ankle depth. "Is that it?" Temari smirked, then she froze as Haku made several hand signs. Around the edge of the arena, a dozen ice mirrors rose and Haku stepped into one, merging with it. A second later, Haku's image appeared in all of the mirrors and Temari cursed as she spun round. "This is a variation of one of my more lethal techniques," Haku's voice said, and Temari fired a strong blast of wind at the nearest mirror, cracking it slightly before the crack shrank, and then vanished. "This is your last chance. Please surrender." "Hell no." Temari shouted as she blasted several more of the mirrors, then suddenly something blurred past her over a dozen times and Temari froze, suspended half a foot above the ground. What did you do to me?" she ground out as she tried to move. "I did not wish to harm you, so I used Nuabari to pass ninja wire through your clothing, restraining you," Haku said, emerging from one of the mirrors. "Please surrender. I can still fight." Temari shouted as a kunai appeared in her hand, then a pair of senbon materialized in her neck and she slumped lifelessly in the web of ninja wire holding her. "Temari!" Kankuro yelled in shocked denial and Haku walked across to the defeated girl. "I have placed her in a near-death state. You will need to remove the senbon and give her medical aid, but she should be fully healed in a week or so." Ibiki nodded as the medical ninja started to cut the ninja wires holding Temari suspended. "Winner, Yuki Haku." Haku nodded, then moved to stand beside the leader of the Irionen. The doctor bent down slightly to listen to the quiet ninja, then nodded in thanks as Temari was placed on the stretcher. "Open the drains and clear the floor," Ibiki commanded, turning back from looking at the screen. "Aburame Shino of Konoha and Omoi of Kumo are next." Haku vanished in a swirl of mist, reappearing next to Zabuza, who nodded approvingly. Ibiki glanced up at them, then looked at the bug user and the Kumonin as they approached across the damp tiles, Omoi looking nervous while Shino barely looked human with his mask modified to resemble a stylized insect's head, complete with mandibles. "Are you ready?" Shino twitched in what was probably a nod while Omoi removed the lollipop from his mouth. "I'm ready." "Good. Then you may begin." Omoi promptly unsheathed his sword and lunged forwards, piercing Shino's right shoulder. An instant later, the Aburame dissolved into a cloud of bugs which engulfed the Kumonin. "Arg. Bugs. Bugs. I hate bugs. Raitun Jibashi." The cloud of bugs suddenly collapsed with only a few surviving long enough to fly away as Omoi stood amidst the dead Kekkai, his hands coated in lightning with arcs of it flickering around his body. There was a long pause, then Shino stepped out from behind the Ramseel statue. "I forfeit. I have lost over a quarter of my colony because of that one move and his technique is a natural counter to my abilities. There is no logical reason to continue a fight in which I will undoubtedly fail to achieve victory. Winner by forfeit, Omoi of Kumo." Ibiki said and Shino trudged to the nearest set of stairs. The next competitors are Kankuro of Suna and Tsurugi Misumi of Konoha. Kankuro shifted the wrapped bundle on his back to a slightly higher position as he moved to the stairs, while the dark-clad Konoha ninja strutted onto the arena. Once both of them were in front of Ibiki, Kankuro unslung his burden and placed it on the floor, holding it upright with his right hand. "You both should know the rules by now," Ibiki said. "Begin." Misumi sprinted forwards and tackled Kankuro. As the Suna ninja tried not to succumb to the impact, Misumi's limbs seemed to extend, wrapping round Kankuro's neck and right arm like snakes while his legs did the same to Kankuro's legs. "What? How are you doing that?" Kankuro demanded and Misumi smirked. "I can dislocate all of my joints and use chakra to control my body," Misumi boasted as his winding limbs tightened. "You really should surrender now. If you don't, I'll break your neck." "Hell no." Kankuro grunted as he strained against the restraining limbs. "Well, I gave you the chance." Misumi gloated and suddenly Kankuro's head jerked to an angle that no human should be able to achieve. For a moment, everyone was silent, then Kankuro's face seemed to crack and waver, revealing a three-eyed wooden faceplate underneath the fragmenting skin. "What the?" "A puppet," Itachi said. "It would seem that this Kankuro is very tricky." Two previously concealed wooden arms sprang out of the puppet's sides and wrapped around Misumi's torso before tightening almost explosively. Misumi tried to scream, but all that came out was a spray of blood as he collapsed onto the floor. "Misumi is unable to fight," Ibiki said as the bandages on the bundle fell away, revealing the real Kankuro smirking as he used finger twitches to control his puppet. Kankuro wins. Medics. Kankuro laughed triumphantly as he walked away from the broken body of his opponent, his four-armed puppet following him. Ibiki looked up at the screen even as the medical ninja placed the limp ninja on a stretcher. The final match is Higurashi Tenten of Konoha vs Haruno Sakura of Konoha, and therefore Hyuga Hinata gets a free pass to the next round. I don't have to fight? Hinata wondered. Well, there are an odd number of people, so it is not surprising. Itachi said with a slight smile. Below them, the two Konoha kunoichi had reached the arena and were squaring off, although the pink-haired one kept glancing up at Sasuke. Final match. Ibiki said. Begin. Tenten instantly threw a trio of kunai at Sakura, who dived sideways with her hands flickering through a set of hand seals. Infinite darkness technique. Tenten froze for a moment and Sakura dashed towards her, only to yelp and dive as Tenten unleashed a barrage of shuriken in her general direction. I can't see you, but I can still hear you. Tenten growled. Sakura frowned as she placed a hand over the cut on her shoulder. When she removed it seconds later, the cut had vanished. Itachi whistled. Ariajutsu and Genjutsu. She must have truly perfect chakra control for that. She certainly has great promise as an Irionin. Kabuto agreed, glancing down at his sling. I wonder if she has learned the bone-setting jutsus yet. The sooner I get healed, the sooner I can return to helping at the hospital. On the arena, Sakura peeped out from behind the support pillar she was hiding behind to avoid the barrages of kunai and shuriken. As the horizontal metal rain slackened, Sakura ran through a few new hand signs and Tenten blinked. Ha! It wore off. She exulted, then she slowly turned, hands filled with shuriken. Where are you? Sakura pulled out a kunai and tiptoed silently towards Tenten, who was still scanning the arena. What? She was inspired by how you defeated us just prior to your C-rank mission. Sasuke said. That's her first original genjutsu, it lets the victim see everything except for her. Naruto gave a soft whistle as Sakura moved behind Tenten and raised her kunai. As she did so, her foot caught one of the discarded shuriken, causing it to clatter against a kunai. Twin rising dragons. Tenten shouted as she dropped her weapons and pulled out a pair of scrolls, slamming them upright onto the ground. The scrolls emitted a cloud of smoke before rocketing upwards, unrolling as they did so to form a double spiral with Tenten leaping up between them, her hands outstretched before she began to spin. Sakura reacted even as Tenten was rising by ducking into the space between the scrolls even as a veritable hail of kunai, shuriken and sinbon sliced down, turning the stone floor into a sea of sharp metal. As Tenten stopped spinning, Sakura started to grab the discarded weapons and hurled them at the weapon's mistress. Although caught by surprise, Tenten managed to pull out a kunai with her left hand and deflect the attack even as her right hand flicked out. A pair of sinbon sliced outwards, ricocheting off the edge of the balcony and embedding themselves in Sakura's neck, causing her to collapse. Haku gasped as Tenten landed. Hey, that's what happened to my sister. Kankuro shouted and Tenten nodded. I finally spotted her when the pulses of chakra I used to unseal my weapons disrupted her genjutsu. I hope I got it right. You did. Haku said, leaning forwards for a better view. In fact, you may have managed to do it better than I did. It should not take as long for her to heal. Ibiki looked at the floor and sighed. This will take a long time to clear up. I got it. Tenten said as she flexed her fingers. Sparkles of light showed the ninja wire as she used it to gather the weapons, sending them into a large heap in the corner of the room. Looking at the mound of metal, she sighed. It's going to take me ages to reseal all of that back into my scrolls. Winner by knockout, Higurashi Tenten. Ibiki announced. Medic Neens, take Hirono to the infirmary. Would all winners please come down to the arena? Anko, the box, if you would? As the genin moved to form a line in front of Ibiki, Anko reappeared holding a wooden box with a circular hole cut into the top. Roll up, roll up. Get a token and discover your enemy, she announced. Samui was the first to reach in, and she looked at her token. 6. 1. Omoi said. I'm in the first match, what if my clock fails and, I'll not the time? Samui growled and Omoi nodded nervously. Great, number 4. Kankuro groused. Not like it's an omen or anything. 7. Gaara droned listlessly. I have number 9. Haku said. Suigetsu-san? Number 8. The white-haired teen grinned. I have number 5. Lee exclaimed. Samui-san, we shall have a truly youthful battle. Ah, right. That's cool? Samui said slowly, giving Lee a worried look. I have number 3. Naruto supplied and Kankuro winced. Ouch, I'm up against the genin that Zabuza finds scary? I am dead. I have number 10. Hinata whispered and Tenten reached into the box to grab the last token. Number 2. Then the first round is as follows. Omoi vs Tenten, Ruto vs Kankuro, Lee vs Samui, Gaara vs Suigetsu, and Haku against Hinata. Match 6 is the winner of Match 1 who will fight the winner of Match 2, while the winner of Match 3 shall be against the winner of Match 4 in Match 7. The winner of 5 will then fight the winner of the 6th match, and the winner of that will fight the winner of the 7th match. Any questions? The genin remained silent and Ibiki nodded. All matches will take place in a month's time to allow you to heal, practice, and develop new skills to counter your opponents. Ibiki finished. Now, if you will follow us, we will take you all back to Konoha. Naruto stepped off the barge and half-turned to offer Hinata his hand. Hinata accepted it, and once she was on dry land, she refused to relinquish it, instead tucking herself into his side. Hey, Kiba said, do you smell? It's them. Both Naruto and Hinata followed Kiba's shocked gaze, and their eyes widened as they saw the armor-clad duo of Gozu and Meizu. Gozu, Meizu. Zabuza growled as he stalked past the genin. I hope you morons appreciate how much Mei-sama had to do to secure your release, although I don't think it was worth it. Being taken down by genin, ha. It was a Hyuga. Gozu protested weakly. She shined straight between us and attacked as soon as she appeared. Zabuza glared at them before reaching out and clapping them on their shoulders. Good to finally have you idiots back. May send someone to escort you back to Kiri. Ayo. Get your pansy but over here. A tallish blue-haired man with an eye patch strolled over, and the demon brothers turned to look at him. He returned their gaze with a tranquil look which somehow seemed to hold the promise of decisive retribution should they anger him. Gozu, Meizu, you will go with Ayo here back to Kiri. Take this scroll with you, it's a preliminary report. Get gone. Thank you, Zabuza-sama. Gozu managed as he dragged Meizu off and Zabuza snorted. Idiots. Ah well. Kojuro, you'll be working on your strength. Kojuro blinked. Zabuza-sensei. I'm not in the finals. No reason to stop training. Zabuza snapped at him. Suigetsu, we'll be sparring. I was talking to that Kumo swordsman and you're fighting a Jinchuriki. You need to get your skills up, especially your speed. Haku, damn it. Not certain how to take down a Hyuga. Do what you think best. Yes, Zabuza-sama. We start tomorrow. Zabuza growled. For now, there's a bottle of sake with my name on it. Seeing those two leave reminds me. Itachi said from behind them, causing all 3 members of Team 7 to jolt in shock at his silent approach. I really should check to see what happened to the ladies I retrieved from Wave. Sensei, Kiba growled. Stop doing that to us. Itachi shrugged. I was talking to Mato guy. Ruto, Jiraiya has agreed to help you learn the other jutsu of your father, so you are excused from the team for training with him. Asuma has mentioned that he will be happy to help you with your futon abilities as well. Hinata, your father has offered to help you with your juho and the special moves you have developed, although Anko-san has said that she promised to teach you the basics of Hibi-style taijutsu. So, what are you doing, sensei? Hinata asked curiously. Guy wants to train Lee more in taijutsu, so I'll be running a temporary partial team of Kiba and Niji. Teammate will also be running short for a few weeks while Sakura recovers, and with my brother still recovering from Orochimaru's attack, that leaves only Shino fully capable. As such, I will be borrowing him for a C-rank mission I picked up. Another mission. Yeah, maybe it'll get me a field promotion. Kiba cheered. It's an escort mission. Itachi said and Kiba shrugged. So was the one to wave. Itachi-san, is this him? A new, female voice said and Itachi turned, bowing slightly to the new arrival. Naori-san. Naori nodded back, then turned her attention to the trio of genin. Naruto reached up and removed his mask as Naori activated her Sharingan, then the three tomos seemed to form three arms reaching from the pupils, expanding near the edge to outline a red three-petal flower shape. Shursui was right. She said in a wondering tone of voice. He is amazing to look at. Naori's eyes reverted back to their ebony hue, and Naruto donned his mask again. Itachi, word got back to us about Naka. He's joined a group of S-ranked criminals, a group which includes Orochimaru. The Snake Sannin. Itachi said quietly. This could be somewhat problematic. With his grasp of Izanagi, Naka is a formidable adversary in his own right. Allied with the traitor, his prowess would become far greater. That's what Jiraiya-sama said. Naori agreed, then she scowled. Then he made a comment about putting me into his next book. Killer Bee told him that Ika was smut. Itachi said with a slight smile. I do not believe I have ever seen Jiraiya so annoyed outside a combat situation before. It was diverting. Serves the old pervert right. Naori agreed. I'm not a pervert. Jiraiya exclaimed as he seemed to materialize behind Naori, making her jump in shock. I'm a super pervert. For a long moment, both Uchiha stared at the white-haired old man, then Itachi nodded. I believe that I will go with my brother-in-law to be on this. Lame. Jiraiya pouted as a new voice spoke. I like your style, that's really cool / you really told this white-haired fool. But now on timing we must talk / so Mr. 9, let's take a walk. The smut artist can come as well / but if he puts me in a book, I'll give him hell. Yo. Jiraiya growled at how he had been described. It's not smut, it's art. You think it's art, I know that, but / the rest of us know it's just smut. What? It's art, damn it. Smut. Art. Smut. Art. Smut. So. Hinata said as she emerged from the bathroom. How did the talk go? It went all right. Naruto shrugged. For the next few weeks, I'll be being helped by Bisama in talking to Kurama. Kurama? Hinata asked and Naruto patted his stomach. Apparently it's the Kyuubi's real name. If I can get on good terms with it, I may be able to use its yukai. Bisama showed some of what he can do. He was able to materialize the 8 tentacles of the Hachibi. Jiraiya wants me to sign the Toad contract like my father did, and has asked the Hokage's guard to help me learn the Hiroshin at some point after the exams. Hinata whistled appreciatively as she sat on the edge of the bed and then rolled over to snuggle against Naruto's side. What about you? Father has agreed to spar against me, and I am going to try to increase my speed as much as possible. Hinata yawned. That Haku was scary to watch. Naruto frowned. You know, we still haven't found out if Haku is a boy or a girl. Hinata shrugged and snuggled tighter against Naruto. Night. Good night, Hinata Heim. Naruto whispered. Sweet dreams. Chapter 23. Hey, Gaki. Jiraiya said as he gracelessly flopped down onto the tatami. So, you're up against the puppet user first. I already have a plan for defeating him, Jiraiya-san. Naruto said, the grin evident in his voice. The second fight, if I go up against Tenten, my Totan Kekkai Genkai should give me an advantage, especially with a couple of the moves that I am practicing. It's the Kumo ninja who worries me. I need more practice with Asuma sensei to get my futon skills up to a higher level, otherwise I'll be vulnerable to his Raiten techniques. You really have thought it through. Jiraiya noted. Now, you remember that seal that I had you run chakra through a few days back? Naruto nodded slowly. It was a special chakra analysis seal. Jiraiya said with a grin. I managed to work out how to turn your chakra slightly visible for a while. Only a few minutes, but it'll be long enough. I need to examine the hack no Fuin Shiki for a moment. Put this tag on your chest and channel your chakra into it until I tell you to stop. Naruto carefully took the proffered tag and looked at it. Are you sure it'll be temporary? Tested it on myself. Jiraiya shrugged. Naruto gave it another look, then he removed his tunic and placed the tag on his chest before starting to channel chakra. Wow, you have a strong chakra system. Jiraiya said, and Naruto lifted his hand, staring at the glowing lines of chakra and the dots that were his tenketsu. Ah, there's the seal. Let's see, filter, buffers, aha. There they are, the storage seals for the Kage Bunshins. What the? Did he screw up the inflow runes? Oh, Minato, you fucking genius. What is it? Naruto asked and Jiraiya grinned. I always knew that my student was brilliant. He planned ahead and saw that it might be possible to supply extra chakra to his and Kushina's Bunshins, so he provided spare inflow runes for it. All I need to do is apply a pair of medical chakra purification seals that were developed 4 years ago, and we'll be able to wake your parents up. Heck, apply 4 of them, and they'll be able to accumulate enough chakra to manifest Kage Bunshins of their own in the real world, although it'll only be about 1 a day at best. And if we use purified Yukai? Jiraiya froze. What? I assume that there are inflows for both of them. Naruto asked and Jiraiya nodded. Then a normal seal each for sustaining them, and a purified Yukai seal to boost their power levels. That would cause them to overload. Jiraiya mused slowly. Even at the lowest levels such a seal could operate it would be too much for them. And if you split the output? Or maybe divert it into a chakra reservoir for them to use. Jiraiya paused, then he slapped himself on the forehead. Why the hell didn't I think of that? It would let them both tap into it at will while the medical seals would act as a safety net. Kid, you're brilliant. Just brilliant. I'll start work on it this afternoon. Naruto opened his mouth to answer, then he felt the tag on his chest shred and fall off. A second later, the chakra lines showing in his hand faded away. What happened? Meh, the tag burned out. Jiraiya said with a shrug even as he scribbled into a notebook that he had pulled out. Happens when you have Kage plus levels of chakra. And will the seals you're planning turn invisible like the rest of me? Jiraiya froze for a long moment. Ah hell. I'm going to need to mix some very special inks. Charge up this chakra storage seal for me, will you? I'm going to have to do a lot of experimenting. Oh, remind me to pull out the Toad contract for you sometime next week. Sasuke watched as his older brother's temporary team vanished from view, then he turned and walked towards the Uchiha district. Despite the complex seal surrounding it, the mark that Orochimaru had given him still seemed to somehow throb, albeit without any actual pain. Uchiha Sasuke? Sasuke paused as the slightly familiar voice hailed him. Turning, he found himself facing one of the few Uchiha more powerful than his father. Naori-sama. He managed despite his suddenly dry throat. Your brother asked me to oversee your training, Naori said, and Sasuke almost stopped breathing. He was going to be trained by one of the Uchiha no Manjikyu. I have some new Raitun jutsu for you to learn, and given your skills and chakra nature, I think you should start learning Kenjutsu. At the very least, you should learn the intercepting blade style. Your brother said that you are already skilled for your rank in our main taijutsu style, the intercepting fist. Sasuke nodded as he glanced at Naori's left hip where two swords were attached by combat bandages. Will I be learning twin wielding? He asked hopefully, and Naori gave him a long look before shaking her head. No, you don't have the flexibility for that. If we can get your speed and strength up a little bit more though, then I believe that you would be well suited to using Ichikoto. Of course, that depends on you getting good enough. Are you up to it? Sasuke nodded with a determined expression on his face. Good. Let's go. Oh, you'll be sparring against someone else who can use two swords. Really? Sasuke asked, then he halted in his tracks. You can't mean Rock Lee. Naori nodded and Sasuke paled. I watched him in the preliminaries. Oh, Kami. Unseen by Sasuke, Naori smirked. Anko just managed to avoid the unexpected strike encountered, only for her arm to go numb as a trio of strikes blocked her tenketsu while simultaneously hitting a pressure point. Cursing, she leapt away, only for her adversary to move with her at almost exactly the same time, almost as if they were two bodies controlled by a single mind. Enough! Hinata's palm came to a stop a bare inch away from Anko's nose, and the older kunoichi sagged in relief. How the hell did you do that? Hinata blushed and looked down. I came across a book on Hellstromism a few years back. Bloody hell! Anko cursed. Hellstromism, muscle reading. I use chakra reading as well. Hinata interjected, earning another shocked look. You're telling me that you've managed to turn your Byakugan into the Hyuga equivalent of a one-tomo Sharingan? Hinata ducked her head and Anko slumped against one of the trees surrounding the training area, rubbing her deadened arm. Does Ruto know about this? I haven't actually told him. Hinata admitted, and Anko nodded approvingly. Good. He'll probably have a few surprises for you when you face each other, so keeping some of your own in reserve is an excellent move. You ready for Senbon practice? Yes, sensei. Good. Anko grinned as her hands suddenly filled with metal needles. Dodge. Be watched approvingly as Samui and Omoi sparred against each other. Although they were being careful to avoid lethal or disabling strikes, neither of them were holding back, their swords seeming to blur as they spun and dodged in a steel-edged dance of death. Beside him, Karui grumbled under her breath. B gave her a curious look and she sighed. Wondering how I screwed up against that bull-headed idiot. Be cool about it, he was better, that's all. It happens. He cut my clothes off without touching my skin. Karui half-shouted. Even I can't do that to someone if they're standing still, let alone trying to fight back. Kid worked hard for that. Be allowed, and Karui huffed in exasperation. How did he get that good? 'Cause Kenjutsu and Taijutsu is all he has. B said, earning a shocked look. I've been talking to others about him, he got chakra, but he ain't able to use it. Samui disengaged from Omoi in a clattering of blades and walked over. Did I hear you right? He can't use his chakra? B nodded and Samui grinned in a manner that would have made any nearby demon proud. Sensei, what genjutsu can you teach me? Baki watched closely as Jiraiya examined the seal that held the Ichibi inside Gaara. After a few moments, Jiraiya shook his head and walked over, his face showing barely restrained fury. What the hell was the person who applied that seal thinking? He snarled. There's no mental protection at all, and the power control runes. I'm amazed that the one-tail hasn't broken free already. It could escape at any time. Baki paled at that. Lord Kazekage wanted a weapon. And he got an unstable explosive tag with enough power to destroy Suna. Jiraiya growled back, then he sighed and shook his head. Alright, listen. Either you let me fix that abomination of a seal, or I'll have the Hokage expel your team as a danger to Konoha. I don't want a seal that unstable around me for any longer than I absolutely have to have it. Baki sighed. We would prefer to stay. Fix it. Jiraiya nodded, then paused. Out of interest, who did the seal? Lady Chiho. What? Jiraiya exploded. You mean you let a Fuinjutsu apprentice try to create a seal that you need to be a Fuinjutsu master to do? No wonder your Jinchuriki is totally fucked up. You have no idea how lucky you are, there was an incomplete suicide array built into that seal. 2 more runs and Suna would be a glowing crater by now. Baki gulped as the enormity of the situation crashed home like a collapsing dune. What the fuck was she trying to do? Jiraiya continued, ignoring the pale ninja. It's like she tried to mash together 3 incomplete designs without stopping to analyze them. The Kazekage insisted on the job being done as quickly as possible. Baki offered meekly, then he swallowed as Jiraiya glared at him. Zabuza frowned as Chojuro staggered as he frantically blocked. Enough. Suigetsu stepped back and slung his weapons while the spectacled teen failed to do the same as his arms were trembling too much. Chojuro, you need to do more strength exercises. Zabuza grumbled. Take half an hour to relax, then start with. Zabuza-sama. Zabuza turned to see his 3rd genin approaching. Yes, Haku. Ah, you're Mato guy, aren't you? The bull-haired green spandex-clad Jonin grinned and Zabuza blinked as his teeth seemed to sparkle in the light. Yes, I am Mato guy, the famed green beast of Konoha. Your youthful genin asked for help for a friend, and I could not turn down such a request. Zabuza's gaze tracked to Haku, who shrugged slightly. You saw how strong Lee-san was in the preliminaries, Guy-sama is the one who trained him. I hoped that he could give Chojuro-san a few pointers. Zabuza turned back to the Konoha Jonin, then looked round almost frantically, finding him examining a freaked-out Chojuro. How the hell did he move that fast? He's as fast as you are. Haku started to reply, then paused as Guy started to rummage in a bag. Where did that bag come from? He didn't have it before, did he? Zabuza half-ranted as Guy pulled out a set of 4 weights and placed them in front of Chojuro. These are Lee's old training weights. These are the leg weights and these are for your arms. They weigh 20 kilos each, but have weight seals, so that you can increase how heavy they are by placing chakra into them. They can go up to 300 kilos. Total? Chojuro asked in a tone of voice that made it clear that he knew that he wasn't going to like the answer. Guy laughed. Total? No, my youthful friend, each. They are too light for my youthful student Lee, but I am certain that they will help you in your quest to become a genius of hard work. Bloody hell. Zabuza cursed. 1,200 kilos is too light? What the fuck is he? That was a most unyouthful bit of language, Zabuza-sama. Guy frowned reprovingly. Ruto-san, said the first of the 3 ninja in greeting as Naruto stepped out of his home. I am Shiranui Genma. The scarred one is Namishi Rado, and the one with the small goatee is Tatami Iwashi. No jokes about my name, please. Iwashi said with a haughty look. I've heard them all, and I'm flat-tiered by the amount there are. Honored to meet you. Naruto said and Rado grinned lopsidedly. We're here to see if you can learn your father's jutsu. But I already know it. Naruto said slowly as he held up his left hand and created a Rasengan in it. We mean the other jutsu. Iwashi said as the trio moved to surround Naruto, then they extended their arms, placing their thumbs and first two fingers together so that the three of them formed a triangle. "What are you, whoa?" For a brief instant, they were surrounded by smoke, then it vanished to show that they were stood on top of the Hokage monument. The three Chunin lowered their hands and Genma rolled the senbon in his mouth to the other side. That was the Hiroshin. Rado said, turning to gaze out over Konoha. "We can perform it as a team, but your father could perform it at any time. Although you may not be able to learn it in time to use it in the finals, it is our hope that you eventually gain the ability to perform it." Naruto blinked several times, then he nodded slowly. "I have the original scrolls, but..." "You do?" Rado interrupted. "Can we see them? We might be able to learn how to do it solo. I'll have to discuss this with Hayashi-sama." Naruto managed and the three Chunin took position around him again. "There's a tag in his study. Let's go." Hyuga Hayashi prided himself on his self-control. He refused to let anything overcome his poise and dignity. Even the attempted treason by the former elders against the clan had not made more than a minor dent in his demeanor. Even the weird genjutsu lantern that Naruto had made had simply caused no more than a minor external twitch, despite how it violated all the rules of logic and common sense. He would therefore deny to his dying day that he screamed like a little girl when four people appeared in the middle of his study in a flash of light. "Hinata?" Naruto called as he looked around him, while Hayashi quickly brought his heartbeat back under control. "She is not here." Naruto said, completely missing the smirks of the three Chunin he was with. "Hanabi? Sorry we scared you. She is at the academy." Hayashi said, then he mentally facepalmed as Naruto looked round. Really? I could have sworn I heard her scream." "It was just your imagination," Hayashi said quickly. "I assume that from the manner of your arrival that you wish to examine the Hiroshin scrolls?" "Yeah," Naruto said, then he paused. "Hey, do any of the Hyuga know it?" "No," Hayashi said. "You did not give us permission to learn it, so we did not. Besides, if we did, then the Uchiha would probably rise up against us because we would have too much power." "Oh," Naruto said thoughtfully. "This is another of those Rasengan things, isn't it?" "Rasengan things?" Rado asked curiously. "Clan techniques," Hayashi said in explanation. "The more people know a technique, the more likely it becomes that those who would misuse it learn it as well." "Then, yeah," Genma said. "This is one of those Rasengan things." Kankuro smirked as the two puppets worked together to shred his target. "That's nasty," Temari said from the deck chair that she was lying in. Kankuro's smirk widened. "Watch this." The six-armed puppet grabbed the next target in its arms, a life-sized strawman, and used them to push the mannequin into its open torso, which then slammed shut. At the same time, the arms and head of the crow puppet detached, revealing that they ended in long, sharp blades. The detached parts floated into position around Black Ant, which had used its arms to secure itself to the ground. Then they lunged forwards, each blade neatly penetrating through a hole in Ant's torso and impaling the mannequin. The sound of bursting rubber preceded a trickle of water flowing out of the base of Black Ant, then its torso opened and the shredded remains of the strawman tumbled out, trailing strands of rubber from the water balloons that had been inside it. Temari winced as Crow's limbs and head floated back to the rest of the puppet, reattaching themselves. "If I can get the sides to work, I won't need to use Crow as part of the finishing move, but for now it will take down most enemies it catches," Kankuro said with an evil smile. "I'll take down that ice user that almost killed you. No one does that to my family and lives. No one." Hinata lifted up the odd piece of curved metal and looked at it curiously. The outside of it seemed to be a single piece of steel with a notch at the lower midpoint. Above the notch was engraved the leaf of Konoha. The inside was a different story, however. Lined with a different metal, it had a Fuinjutsu array carved into it. "Put it on," Hinata shrugged mentally and, knowing that her beloved wouldn't hurt her, she placed the metal band on like a pair of sunglasses. To her surprise, the band became transparent almost the instant she slipped it into place. Turning, she froze at the sight before her. Ruto-kun. It's something the old pervert came up with, as using chakra color tags was becoming less of an option since my chakra was developing a resistance to it. Naruto grinned and Hinata could see his grin, even without using her Byakugan. It needs my chakra to make it work. I need to recharge it every week or so, but it means that if you wear it, you can actually see me. What color am I? Silver. Hinata said, tilting her head slightly. How? Well, you remember that I see because the light that passes through my eyes affects the chakra in them? Naruto asked and Hinata nodded. These use a similar thing. Any light that passes through me briefly carries tiny parts of my chakra with it. This visor picks up that chakra and turns it into silver light for whoever's wearing it. Amazing. Hinata breathed. They take a while to make though, and the metal is rather expensive. Naruto shrugged. It also has the advantage of concealing the use of your Byakugan. Hinata nodded, then she activated her dojutsu. Instantly, the whole world seemed to turn gray with threads of chakra permeating it. It doesn't make you glow you this way. Hinata half complained and Naruto shrugged. Well, Pervy Sage wasn't sure how to make it work with the Byakugan, so he instead made it all transparent to active dojutsus. I was going to give one to Itachi-sensei and another to Kiba once they returned from their mission. Hinata took off the visor and smiled at Naruto. I think that they'll appreciate it. It'll also be useful when we have children. Naruto started to nod, then paused. If I can get one that I can cause to fade, I'll be able to see my hands and feet when I'm using my Totan Kekkai Genkai. That'll really help me with my stealth. Hinata smiled as Naruto ran off, intent on finding Jiraiya to tell him about his new idea. Chapter 24. Niji paused at the entrance of the large dojo and stared in amazement at the sight before him. Around the edge of the dojo were over 30 members of the branch family, ranging from small children to the branch elders, each of whom had a pile of various objects that they were throwing at Hinata, who was standing in the center and not even trying to dodge. None of the projectiles were even getting close to her, however. Niji activated his Byakugan and felt his respect for the former clan heiress rise even higher. She was standing proud, her hands moving so fast that they seemed to blur and leave after images. From the palm of her hands she was expelling chakra, but shaping it into long blades that she was using to weave a protective dome around herself, using her flexibility to ensure that it provided full 360-degree protection. Incredible! He whispered as he stood almost entranced by the deceptive simplicity of the technique. She calls it the Shugohaku Rokujuyan Sho. His father noted from just behind him, and Niji nodded almost absently as another barrage of thrown items disintegrated as they impacted the dome. Protection of the 8 trigrams 64 palms. He whispered. It looks like it could defeat the Kaiten. So, this is the technique that Kiba was talking about. The barrage stopped and Hinata lowered her arms, allowing the chakra dome to fade away. Niji and I-sen. She called and Niji bowed. Hinata-sama. Niji replied as he straightened to see Hinata pouting at him, and he fought down a chuckle. That is an amazing technique. I was inspired by the Rasengan. Hinata admitted and Niji nodded, remembering how the chakra blades had seemed to twist and lash as they formed the dome. I do not think that I could do that. Niji admitted, then he let the corner of his mouth briefly quirk upwards. I am nowhere near as flexible as you are. Hinata shrugged as she accepted a beaker of water. If you can do half a dome, then perhaps someone else could do the other half. A fascinating idea. Hayashi said as he entered the dojo, causing all the branch members to bow. Daughter, once the exams are over, perhaps you could help develop the technique further. Hinata nodded. Yes, father. All right. Jiraiya announced as Naruto entered the training area that the Hyuga had allowed them to use. B-san tells me that you've managed to make friends with the Kyuubi similar to how he's friends with the Hachibi. Is that right? Naruto nodded. Yeah, kinda. I've given him full access to my senses and, well, watch this. Vaijutan, Kageyukai Bunshin. A burst of smoke heralded the appearance of a small fox with multiple tails, which looked round, then up. Damn it, use more of my yukai next time. Naruto? Jiraiya asked slowly as he subtly shifted his weight, ready to attack or defend. Oh, this is Kurama-sama. Or a clone of his. When it pops, Kurama gets all the memories like I do with my clones. I made one earlier today at his request. And if I channel more of your yukai, it starts to hurt, Kurama, remember? We're still working on a direct mental link so that he can be in the seal while directly experiencing the real world. I think I need to talk to Inoichi-sama about that. The Kit Kyuubi sulked and Naruto laughed. Hey, you had fun when we practiced this yesterday evening. Remember how Hanabi glummed you? The Kit Kyuubi looked away. Never talk about that again. You liked it. Naruto protested. You let her fall asleep wrapped in your tails. Kurama growled, then glared at the toad Sannin who had fallen over, and was writhing on the ground as he howled with laughter. Foxes eat toads, so shut up or I'll decide to have a snack. Sorry. Jiraiya gasped as he sat up and wiped his eyes. Irika stared at the Hyuga heiress who was sitting at her desk, stoking a small multi-tailed fox's belly. The rust-colored fox was sprawled out half asleep as her fingers stroked its fur. If not for the size and the fact that it was almost comatose with pleasure, Irika would have mistaken it for the Kyuubi. Konohamaru gave her a long look that bordered on a glare. The boss had given Hanabi a cool fox, but not him? He was going to have to ask for one too. There was no way he was going to let himself fall behind again. So why did you want me to make a small clone of you for her anyway? Naruto asked his Biju companion. Because you see her as family and it would hurt you to lose her, and that would affect how often I get to come out. The Kyuubi offered weakly. Jiraiya fell over again and Kurama glared at the laughing man. So, what did you want? Jiraiya sobered, then his hands flashed through a series of 5 seals before he bit his thumb and slammed his hands down. A cloud of smoke engulfed him, and when it cleared, Jiraiya was standing on the back of a large orange toad which had blue markings. I think you're ready to sign the toad contract, Jiraiya said as he hopped down. The orange toad looked at him, then at Naruto. Gamma, this is Uzumaki Namikaze Naruto, also known as Yuri Iruto. Naruto, meet the guardian of the toad contract, Gamma. Honored to meet you, Naruto said, and Gamma stared at him with wide eyes. Hey, pervy sage. Gamma croaked after a long moment. There are floating clothes talking to me. Did you mess up my summoning or something? It's his blood limit, Jiraiya said in explanation. He's naturally invisible. Gamma thought about it for a long moment, then he shrugged. So, what did you want? Wait, Namikaze? He's the Yondame's kid? Jiraiya nodded proudly and Gamma looked at Naruto again. So, you want him to sign like his old man did? Hold on. Naruto watched in horrified fascination as Gamma produced a large scroll from his mouth, using his tongue to lay it on the ground before nudging it so that it rolled open. The toad contract, Jiraiya pronounced proudly. Sign it and you'll become the 3rd toad summoner. Euf. Naruto managed. It's been in a toad's mouth. It's got toad spit all over it. Jiraiya facepalmed. No, it hasn't and it doesn't. What? Naruto half-yelled. Listen, old man, I know what I saw. Gamma chuckled as he watched the impromptu show. The scroll is stored in another dimension and while Gamma uses his tongue to summon it, he's careful not to get it damp. got it? Jiraiya growled and Gamma nodded in confirmation. Naruto looked at them both suspiciously before walking over to the scroll and looking at it. That's my dad's signature? Yes, it is. Jiraiya said proudly. My greatest student. Now, all you have to do is to sign your name in blood. Naruto nodded and Jiraiya watched as his gloves seemed to drift above the scroll. Done? Good. Now, you just need to draw a little blood, and then use the following seals: board dog, bird, monkey and ram before slamming your hand down and releasing your chakra. Don't forget to use as much chakra as you can. Naruto nodded and his gloves seemed to flicker as he rushed through the seals. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. Jiraiya's eyes widened in shock as Naruto vanished in a cloud of smoke, then he quickly bit his thumb and ran through his own set of seals. Jiraiya. If you have summoned me to help you peek at girls again. The massive toad growled and Jiraiya shook his head. No, Lord Gamabunta, I didn't. Listen, why did you reverse summon Naruto? Gamabunta blinked, then he placed the tip of a paw on the scroll that was still on the ground in front of Gamma. What are you talking about? You're the only active summoner we have. Jiraiya froze, then he grabbed the horns on his custom Hittite and groaned. Oh Kami. Invisible blood, invisible chakra, why the fuck didn't I think it would be a problem? Gamabunta blinked again. Jiraiya, what are you talking about? Naruto looked round at the place where he had found himself. What happened to me? A sound behind him caused him to spin round and he paused. You don't look like a toad to me. This isn't good. Gamabunta noted, earning a flat stare from Jiraiya. Not good? The toad Sannin repeated in a voice barely a hair's breadth from hysteria. Not good? He could be anywhere. No, he is in the lands of the summon tribe most suited to himself. Gamabunta said thoughtfully. Perhaps if you describe his personality to me, I can work out which summons he may have been sent to and thus begin negotiations to get him back. Jiraiya slumped to the grounds. Oh hell, I'm so dead. Where the hell did that brat go? What have you done to my snuggly? A female voice ground out behind him and Jiraiya's eyes widened as he felt the specter of death looming over him. What do you have to say for yourself? Ultimate Toad Sage technique. Jiraiya yelped. Run screaming like a little girl no jutsu. Tenten somersaulted away from her purple-haired adversary's attack, flicking out an arc of shuriken as she did so in order to buy more space. As she landed, she realized that her attempt had failed as the edge of a sword came to rest against her jugular. You need better reflexes than that. Yugao said, stepping back and sheathing her sword. As soon as I got close, you had lost. Damn it. Tenten cursed as she started to collect and store the weapons she had used. Can you use a sword? Yugao asked curiously and Tenten shrugged. I can, but I've never been formally trained. Yugao hummed in thought. Any non-projectile weapons that you have trained in? Well, Tenten mused, I can use single or twin kamas, Kosari Fuba, Kozarigama, Johio, Tanto, Tanfa. I get the message. Yugao said quickly as Lee finished his warm-up exercises and trotted over. Okay, we'll work through your weapons to find out which one is best suited against a sword user. What's a Kosari Fuba? Tenten grinned as she pulled out a small storage scroll and unrolled it. Applying chakra to one of the seals, she turned to show the weapon to Yugao. A short club with a weighted chain at each end? Lee asked in confusion. How does it work? Tenten grinned, then she shifted her grip to one of the end weights. Spinning the weapon spun and twisted, causing the weights to describe complex patterns in the air. Then she hurled it at a tree and Yugao's eyebrows shot up as the Kosari Fuba smashed straight through the trunk, toppling it in a cloud of splinters. Wow. She managed after a long moment. That's one long-range attack sorted and one I don't think he'll see coming. It wasn't my fault. And I didn't see that coming. Yugao managed as she, Tenten and Lee turned to watch the vanishing cloud of dust that marked the passage of Jiraiya and Hinata. Was that a youthful run, or was it unyouthful? Lee mused. Gee, Gaara? The red-haired boy slowly sat up and looked around. I was asleep. Temari nodded and Gaara blinked a few times. The seal works. I cannot hear the Ichibi anymore. Temari stared as Gaara stood up and blinked several more times. I must go and thank Jiraiya for fixing my seal. I don't want to die. Temari and Gaara exchanged confused glances, then Gaara's sand whipped out and flung open the curtains just in time to see two blurs pass by. Was that? Gaara stared wide-eyed at the departing duo. That girl, she is chasing Jiraiya-sama and he is scared of her. I may need to reconsider my actions should I meet her in the finals. Temari nodded slowly. I'm suddenly very glad that I didn't make it, if all the Leaf Ninja are that good. I mean, her fiancé is the one that Zabuza finds scary. Indeed. Gaara allowed. However, for now I hunger, for salted tongue. I believe that Baki-sensei has some among his rations. Sumione help me. Temari turned away from the sight of the panicking toad sage frantically dodging chakra-laced strikes. Gaara, wait up. B rubbed at his jaw and glared at his fellow Kumo Jinchuriki. Why you hate my rap? Now is not the time. Ni Yujito growled as she looked at the trio of collapsed genin. What the hell were you doing? Training. B grumped as he started to pick up and sheath the swords that he had dropped when Yujito had punched him in the face. They said they were ready and you know how I hate overconfidence. They may talk real big / but they ain't quite there, do you dig? Yujito shook her head. Damn it, B. We need them ready for the finals. You keep doing that to them and they'll have to drop out because they'll be in hospital. Hey, don't worry, they'll be fine / I went light on them this time. Yujito opened her mouth to say something, then paused. Suni healed me. The hell? Hey, weren't that the toad sage? B mused. Thought he normally chased to girls, not the other way round. Was that a Hyuga? Yujito asked and sighed. Okay, Gyuki, they're coming back so let's stop them before they hurt themselves. Eight Tails partial transformation. The air behind B seemed to ripple, then 8 tentacles appeared from his back, each stretching almost 20 feet. B took a couple of steps, then he strained against the sudden impact as his tentacles wrapped round the two figures, halting their chase. Hey there now, what's all this here / you're running and fighting and causing lots of fear? Little girl tell me why you chase the old perv / causing him to dodge, to duck and to swerve. HMMMPH humph. B frowned, then shifted the tips of the tentacles, freeing Hinata's mouth. He did something and Rotokuin's gone. Not my fault. Jiraiya countered as he tried to wriggle out of the tentacles that were wrapped round him. I didn't realize that his chakra would cause that to happen. Cause what to happen? A new voice asked and Jiraiya managed to turn even paler as he looked at the new arrival. Sensei, well, you see. Sarutobi Hiruzen motioned for Jiraiya to stop, then he pinched the bridge of his nose. B-san, if you would be so kind as to bring them to my office? I don't think that I can risk you releasing either of them yet. Sure thing, Hokage-sama. B replied with a respectful nod. I'll look after your team. Yujito said, then she reached out and grabbed B's scarf, dragging him down to her level even as she raised her other hand to show that her fingernails had extended into long claws. And if you do anything that gets us into trouble, I'll ensure that you can only rap in soprano, got it? B nodded frantically and Yujito released him with a cheerful smile. Okay, off you go. Is she normally like that? Hiruzen whispered and B nodded. Oh yeah, you annoy her and she'll claw your face off. Hiruzen winced. Haku. Zabuza said as he lowered his bottle. This is damn good sake. What is it? I am rather nervous about my upcoming fight with the Hyuga girl. Haku admitted, and Zabuza glanced at his apprentice. What? Why? I saw the toad sage fleeing from her. Zabuza choked, causing the sake he was drinking to spray all over himself. Choking and spluttering, he accepted a small cloth and wiped his face clean. You're telling me that Jiraiya of the Densetsu no Sannin was running away from that girl? Screaming for help as he did so. Haku confirmed, and Zabuza stood motionless for a long moment before handing over the bottle. I think you're going to need this more than I will. Thank you, Zabuza-sama. Haku managed, looking at the bottle in confusion. Be watched with interest as Hiruzen wrote a series of seals onto the 2 chairs in front of his desk. If you can please place them on the chairs, B-san? B nodded and, making sure not to touch the chairs themselves, positioned the captured duo above the chairs before releasing them. Damn it, sensei. Jiraiya moaned. Gravity seals? Thank you, B-san. Hiruzen said. If you could inform Sasuke that our meeting will be postponed, I would be grateful. B nodded and, dismissing his tentacles, quickly scooted out of the room, not wishing to be caught in the impending explosion. As the door started to swing closed, he sagged in relief. I take it I should come back later then. B looked at the black-haired youth who had spoken. Depends, you Sasuke? Uchiha Sasuke. The boy said with a slight bow. An honor to meet you, B-sama. Bakacha. B grinned. So you had a problem. You not all bent out about not getting to the finals? There's always next time. Sasuke shrugged as he rose from the bench he had been sat on. Besides, it gave me more time to try something. I think I've cracked that weird lightning of your brother's. He removed his shades. You use your eyes fo dat? Wait, you can't have done. I used my mind. Sasuke laughed. Everyone knows about the 5 main elements, but they always forget about the yin and yang. As an Uchiha with a Sharingan, I can use yin release and yang release. I tried to combine yin release with my Raiton, and I suddenly had lightning that absorbed light rather than expressed it. Felt different too. He stared at the youth for a long moment. How? I used my mind. Sasuke repeated with a smile. For some reason, when I tried to use yang with Raiton, it was like my body and senses suddenly became supercharged. It was almost painful. Whoa. B managed, and Sasuke grinned. I've already put my findings into the clan archives, so even if something happens to me, my clan can continue. Damn. B managed. Bro's gonna be pissed. Lots of luck and even more work. Sasuke shrugged. It's taken me several weeks to actually get it to a point where I can start to experiment with it. We probably won't get any useful jutsu out of it for another generation or so. We're better at copying than innovating, my brother notwithstanding. B nodded slowly. I'm glad you ain't in the finals. My bro would have a heart attack if you used black lightning in front of him, and I don't wanna be rakage. I hear the paperwork for a Kage position is quite bad. Sasuke agreed. My brother says that he stumbled across a jutsu that can reduce it. The door slammed open, almost falling off its hinges, as a white blur shot past, and B blinked as Hiruzen pinned Sasuke to the wall. What jutsu? What jutsu? Do you have any idea how much paperwork there is to do? What jutsu did your brother find? Sasuke whispered something, and Hiruzen slowly released the young shinobi, before walking to the other side of the room, removing his hat as he did so. Sasuke started sniggering as Hiruzen started to thump his head against the wall. Baka. 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 Kage Bunshin. Why didn't I work it out? Minato must have. Why didn't he tell me? Come on. Sasuke whispered to the gobsmacked Jinchuriki. I know a place that sells great onigiri. Chapter 25. The cloud of smoke dispersed and Naruto looked up at the large castle looming before him. "That is a big place," he said slowly. "Are you certain that the scroll is in there, Shiramaru?" "It is being guarded by my grandfather, Lord Shiromari," said the small chameleon that was fading in and out of visibility on Naruto's shoulder. "He was summoned 50 years ago and never returned." Naruto nodded and moved his hands into a familiar position, causing a veritable wall of smoke to form and then dispel. "What are you doing?" the small reptile asked, and Naruto grinned. "Using my Totan Bunshin to scout out the castle. Hopefully they'll be able to find the summoning scroll, and when they do, we'll go in and get it." "Good plan." "Thanks, Shiramaru." The chameleon nodded, then looked round curiously. "This is strange. I wonder where grandfather is? Who was the last summoner of your clan?" Naruto asked, and Shiramaru turned one eye to look at him. "The last summoner was a samurai lord, Kobusaki Koza, but he died almost 50 years ago," Shiramaru said, then he stiffened. "Hey, that was just after Gramps was summoned. He must have summoned Gramps and died before he could tell him to return." "Don't summons return when they run out of chakra?" Naruto asked, and Shiramaru shrugged. "Normal summons, yeah. Us chameleons, we're different. If we have enough chakra, we can tap into nature chakra as well. Really boosts our skills, gives us shape-changing abilities as well. So, Shiromari could be anything in there." Naruto mused. "That is, not very reassuring. Anything or anyone," Shiramaru said proudly, then he paused. Maybe even a fake scroll." "Oh dear." Naruto started to nod, then froze. "Zoinks! Why the heck would I say that?" "What?" "Oh, one of my clones tripped over a skeleton and dislodged something that took out another clone, but the one that tripped shouted zoinks. I didn't even know I knew that word. It doesn't sound like something a ninja would say." Shiramaru agreed. "And one of my clones just caught a glimpse of someone, a samurai." Naruto continued, earning a puzzled look. "My clones go in groups of 4. If they encounter something, one of them dispels to alert everyone, giving them a heads up. The second and third then check out whatever it was while the fourth hangs back in case something goes wrong. It can see what happens and passes on the memory so that the next team doesn't make the same mistake." "Wow." Shiramaru managed after a long, thoughtful moment. "That's impressive. Hinata and Kiba helped me to refine it," Naruto said with a slight shrug. "As an Inuzuka, Kiba's got a natural gift for pack tactics, and he adapted a hunting pack technique for me to use. Sounds like a good friend." Shiramaru noted, and Naruto nodded. "He's the brother I never had. Arrogant, loud, brash, headstrong, brave, loyal. You couldn't ask for a better friend. I look forwards to meeting him. Once I've signed the contract," Naruto said, earning a hum of agreement. "There's that figure again, the hell?" "What?" "Something just ate one of my clones." "What?" Uchiha Naka glared at his new partner. "Oh, stop that," Orochimaru said as he rummaged through a set of files, finally pulling out a sheet covered with a complex storage seal. "I'll tell you in a minute, I just need to check something." Naka waited as Orochimaru unsealed a set of scrolls, scanned them, and resealed them. "All right. You wanted to know about Pain-sama and his 6 paths, right?" Naka nodded. "And his eyes. I've never seen eyes like his before." "The Rinnegan," Orochimaru confirmed, earning a shocked gasp. "Even if I had the Mangekyo Sharingan like you do, I could not match his power. His eyes give him control of all the elements and the ability to see chakra." Naka whistled in amazement. "And his paths?" "The 6 paths of pain." Orochimaru nodded. "Pain is 6 people, the one you've met is his primary persona. I don't know how it works, but from talking to the others I've figured out some of his abilities. His main body is Deva Path and can pull or push anything. Before you scoff, he can probably push a mountain down so hard it becomes a valley, or pull a tree so that it turns into a battering ram, all without having to move even a finger. Next is his Azura Path, which uses weapons that I've never come across before. I have seen it create 4 extra arms and fire off hundreds of rockets. The third is his Human Path, but I have yet to find out what it does. Fourth is the Animal Path, which can summon animals without needing to go through the summoning ritual. It can also apparently summon people who agree to be summoned, but again I don't know how it works. Fifth is the Preta Path, who can absorb any chakra-based attack or technique, while the Naraka Path apparently has something to do with healing. Again, I don't know. Be aware, however, that what one sees, they all see. And you're not tempted to try and claim one of those eyes for yourself? Naka asked, causing Orochimaru to laugh sarcastically. Very much so, but I am only an S-class nuke nin. Pain is an SSS class. For now, I think I'll concentrate on getting a Sharingan of my own. Oh, not yours, Pain commanded me to work with you. But once I do, perhaps you can give me a few tips on how to use it. Naka smirked. Now, if you'll come with me, it's time to go and meet someone who will be helping us. Orochimaru grinned. Naruto held up the lantern and used it to look around. Shiramaru fixed one eye on the lantern in confusion. Where did you store that? Humph. Oh, the lantern. I didn't, it's a genjutsu that I came up with one day. Hayashi-sama gets a headache whenever I use it around him. I think it affects the Byakugan somehow, but Hinata and Hanabi don't have a problem. Shiramaru's eye twitched to look at Naruto. Wait. That lantern is a genjutsu? How does that work? Genjutsu are mental suggestions. Naruto shrugged. I think that because I use the genjutsu of the lantern to see in the dark, it allows me to see in the dark. Bu. Shiramaru started, then he cut himself off and inhaled deeply. Hold on. It shouldn't work like that. It's an imaginary lantern, right? I guess so. Naruto admitted. Then if the lantern is imaginary, the light it creates should be as well. And? Naruto asked, curious as to where his companion was going with the logic. And it doesn't make any sense. Shiramaru yelled. How does an imaginary lantern create real light? It doesn't. Naruto replied. It only works for those I use the genjutsu on. Shiramaru froze and Naruto gave him a worried look. Shiro? It only works for... The chameleon finally managed. But it can't. I think I know why this Hayashi gets those headaches. What else can you do that you shouldn't be able to? Henge into visibility? Naruto offered, earning another stare. What? But a henge is just a chakra shell that changes how you look and your chakra is invisible. Really? A shell? Naruto asked in shock. I didn't know that. Mine actually lets me change shape. Works for my Totan Bunshin too. I use them as kunai and shuriken all the time. Shiramaru didn't even manage to make a sound as both his eyes were fixed on the young shinobi. You present quite the conundrum, young shinobi. A new voice whispered and Naruto turned, staring up at the old samurai looking at him with an amused smirk. Hey, you're the one my clones saw sneaking around earlier. Greetings, Kabuto. Lord Orochimaru. The new arrival said as he reached up to adjust his glasses. Jonin Naka. I see you are still a genin. Orochimaru smirked. Stepped out during the final round of the secondaries? Actually, no. Kabuto replied with a slight smirk. I broke my left arm in an accident, making it clear that I couldn't continue, but it allowed me to watch the fights while I acted as the Mednin watcher for young Uchiha Sasuke. Anyone of interest, apart from the Jinchuriki? Kabuto reached into his pocket and pulled out a small package. It's all in here. The Hyuga girl didn't actually fight, but she's built up quite the reputation since. Apparently, your former teammate is terrified of her. Orochimaru raised a querying eyebrow. Interesting, please continue. The others were pretty much of a muchness. Kabuto shrugged. If you meet a genin with huge eyebrows, he's a kenjutsu/taijutsu specialist who moves incredibly fast. He's pretty much at mid to high jonin speed. The male Kumo genin can use Raitun, which the Aburame seem very susceptible to, more so than you expected. And the Konoha Jinchuriki? He didn't fight, his opponent forfeited. Kabuto said with a slight shrug. I couldn't get any further information on him, but since he's linked to the Hyuga, we can expect him to have the Rasengan at the very least. Orochimaru took the package and nodded. Excellent. Are you ready for the finals? I already have my disguise sorted. Kabuto nodded and Orochimaru grinned. Excellent. Why are you here, young shinobi? Helping my new friend get his grandpa back. Naruto said, motioning to the chameleon on his shoulder. The elders said that if I signed the chameleon contract, I could then use it to return Lord Shiromari to his family while letting the chameleon clan reclaim their ability to access the shinobi world. The gray-haired samurai nodded slowly. And what say you, little one? The elders approve of Naruto, they want his to sign, but we need to find the scroll first. If the elders summon it back, they don't know if they'll ever get a new summoner. Shiramaru chirped, earning a nod of agreement from Naruto. The old man nodded. Very well. Your quest is an honorable one. The scroll is located in the uppermost room of the central tower. Thanks. Naruto said, then he looked round. Hey, where did you go? I didn't see him leave. Shiramaru said in confusion. Are we sure that he was a samurai and not a ninja? He wasn't dressed like a ninja. Naruto mused as he made his way to the main staircase and began to ascend it. Man, this is a tall tower. Shiramaru tilted one eye up to look at the square staircase vanishing above them. Do you have a clone up there? Naruto paused, then slapped his forehead. I'm an idiot sometimes. Hold on tight. Shiramaru tightened his grip and an instant later, the world seemed to tighten and flex around them, spinning before depositing them at the top of the stairs. Okay. Naruto said, stepping forwards and pushing open the large door in front of him. Let's see what the... The aged samurai looked up from the large scroll he was examining. Ah, good. You made it. I made it? Naruto parrot in shock. But, are you a twin or something? I am the last of my family. The man said sadly. I had thought that there would be no more who could summon my old friend Shiramaru. I am glad to have been mistaken. Kubisaki Koza. Shiramaru suddenly gasped and the man nodded. But, you're dead. I promised my friend that he would not be alone. Koza replied. Please, accept the burden. Naruto swallowed before walking over. Koza stepped back and Naruto slowly unrolled the scroll, revealing Koza's signature. Biting his thumb, he repeated the process he had gone through once before, then he swallowed and channeled as much chakra as he could. Kuchiyos no Jutsu. The castle suddenly seemed to waver and Naruto found himself falling before a billow of cloud caught him. Thou art my new summoner. Identify thyself. I am Urei Ruto, formerly Uzumaki Naruto no Namikaze. Naruto stated, trying to resist the rising panic. I am friend of Shiramaru and the one who has signed the summoning scroll. For a long moment, the sense of pressure increased, then it vanished and Naruto found himself standing in the burned ruins of the castle. What happened? I accepted you as the new summoner of my clan. The voice rumbled and Naruto spun round to see the rapidly condensing cloud swirl and solidify into Koza. Except that there were now two of them. Ha! Gramps! Shiramaru shouted, and one of the Kozas looked round, revealing his eyes to be glowing red. Grandson! It has been too long, you have grown. I kept you here for too many years. The other Koza stated as he started to fade. My time is long gone, my friend. I wish you well and thank you for your loyalty. Naruto blinked several times as the ghostly samurai vanished. Farewell, old friend. May you find the peace you always desired. Shiromari vanished in a cloud of chakra smoke and Naruto frowned. Great, how the hell am I meant to get back to Kono? The wind stirred the dust around the empty ruins. Jiraiya flinched as Hinata glared at him from across the training grounds. Wow, Haim. What did the old perv do? He took you away from me. Hinata replied, then she froze, her eyes widening so much that she could have been mistaken for Rock Lee's younger sister. Naruto. Hinata Haim. Naruto whispered as he wrapped his arms around her and kissed her cheek. Hinata leaned back against him, then she turned round in his embrace and hugged him so hard that she inadvertently lifted him off the ground. Ruto-kun. You're back. Nada air. Naruto choked and Hinata relaxed her grip, but refused to let go. Thank all the 1,000 kamas. Jiraiya breathed. Kid, take my word on this. Never do anything that might piss her off. I barely survived her ire. What? Naruto asked as he stroked Hinata's hair. You're kidding, Aro-sanin, Hinata's the sweetest, kindest person I've ever met. Hinata felt as if her face was about to ignite from her blush while Jiraiya stared at his godson in shock. She was trying to kill me. Naruto shook his head and turned his attention to the girl in his arms. Come on, Haim. Let me wash and change, then how does ramen sound? Hinata giggled. Ramen's your answer to almost everything, isn't it? Hey, it is the food of the gods. No, beloved, that's cinnamon buns. Ramen. Cinnamon buns. Jiraiya watched the pair leave, then he ran through the summoning jutsu. Jiraiya. Gamma. The Toad Sage replied. Naruto's back. Lord Shiromari used one of the lesser favors the Toad clan owes the chameleons to use the Inshinsui to send him back. Favors? Jiraiya blinked. I thought the Toads were one of the strongest summon races there was. How could you owe favors? Long story, but the Toads aren't the only ones who owe the chameleons. Gamma explained. The snakes owe the chameleons as well. Who do you think developed Sage Mode? Jiraiya's jaw dropped. Bu, the pool. It was created by the chameleons after the Jubi was destroyed and the Biju born. The great chameleon sage visited Maya Boku, altering a spring with nature chakra Fuin Jutsu. I do not know what they did for the snakes, but as a result, neither toad nor snake will fight against one who is bonded to the chameleons. Jiraiya stared at Gamma, and then he started to laugh. What? Just wondering if my former teammate was aware of this. Jiraiya chuckled. Oh, if I ever find out where he is, I am so taking my godson with me. Gamma stared at him for a long moment, then he started to chuckle as his mind followed the same path of logic. Welcome back, Ruto-san. Hayashi said with a slight smile as Hinata and Naruto entered the dining hall. My daughters missed you. His statement was proven as Naruto slammed into the ground, having been toppled by Hanabi's high-speed flying glomp. Ruto and I-san. Hey, little firecracker. Naruto laughed as he returned the hug. Sorry to worry you like that. Hanabi hummed happily as Naruto shifted her so that he could sit up while still hugging her, then the other jonin in the room coughed slightly. Welcome back, Ruto-kun. Itachi-sensei. Naruto laughed, then he spotted the person sitting next to his teacher. Sasuke. Sasuke stared at him, briefly activating his Sharingan. Whoa, and I-san. That is weird, even with my Sharingan, I can't see him. It does take some getting used to, Itachi admitted as Hinata folded herself down to sit next to her fiancé. I come bearing gifts from the Wave mission. I am sorry it took so long, but there was quite a problem with certain aspects of the council. Wave mission? Hinata asked curiously. I don't remember anything major about it. The infiltration. Naruto realized. You found something. We did. Itachi confirmed, making a small hand sign. Sasuke nodded and placed a storage scroll on the table, unrolling it to reveal a complex seal before glancing at his brother. Itachi nodded and Sasuke applied some chakra to the scroll, causing a brief cloud of chakra smoke to form. Scrolls from Yuzushiogakure as collected by Gato. Itachi said as the smoke cleared. As the last of Uzumaki blood in Konoha, these scrolls are yours by right. Several of the lesser clans disagreed with that, hence the delay. Hayashi added. It took a while to resolve the issues due to the economic implications. Naruto nodded, his attention transfixed by the pyramid of scrolls of various sizes, all of which had spiral end caps. What's in them? Other scrolls, books, weapons, valuable relics. Itachi said calmly. ANBU checked the scrolls to ensure that none of them were trapped. Some of the gold was removed to pay for the retrieval mission and the checking, but the rest is yours to do with as you please. For now, I would suggest placing it in the Hyuga vaults until such time as you have a vault of your own. Hayashi suggested. Good idea. Naruto agreed. I'll place the summoning scroll in as well. The what? Hayashi, Itachi and Hinata all chorused. Naruto said slowly. Did I forget to mention that? That's it for this reading. Hit like and subscribe for a free ticket pass going to the different worlds of anime fanfictions. Looking forward to having you on board again.